from the police chief and the fire chief to move to next week, I think it is, Mike?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, both had a conflict, so that will shorten up tonight's meeting. You know, we will end up with a couple of marathon meetings, depending on the schedule, but my goal is to finish by 8:30 each night. We won't, as we've done in the past, we won't take any votes until we get through at least a review process with each of the boards, with each of the budgets that we want to walk through at least once. And then we'll begin voting on the approvals as we've done in the past, or the recommendations as we've done in the past. A couple of housekeeping things we will have 5 members throughout the budget process. I know we've had a couple of interest in joining the board, but we have never, during the process of the 19 years that I've been, added any members of to the board during the budget process. So unfortunately, the two other people that have requests in, I'm going to email them if the board agrees that we request that they send their request to join the board to the moderator for his consideration. You know, we're 3/4 of the way through the year. And we have, if we didn't have a voting majority of a board, I would say we would add people, but we have a voting majority with five people. So at this point, unless someone has an objection to that, that's how I'd like to proceed, because we have set precedent that we've never put anybody on once we had our first night of budget hearing. So I just wanted to make sure that, you know, no one was thinking we were slighting them, that it's just, we have never done it before. So I'd just like to continue with that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Yeah, this is also a Board of Selectmen's meeting.
Yep.
So I would like, because it's Zoom, I would like my colleagues to identify themselves.
Sure.
So Mr. Hull, are you present?
Present.
And Dr. Z, are you present?
Present.
And Ken Pacheco is also present at this Zoom meeting. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. And that's a good point. And I will just identify the members of the Finance Committee that are on the meeting tonight is myself, Kevin Perry, Robert Rendon, and Catherine Fournier. Mr. Roach is absent due to travel. So thanks for the reminder on that, Ken. We will have public input. If I do request, if someone wants to comment, that they just send a quick chat note that says, hey, Mr. Chairman of the Finance Committee, I'd like to speak. I will, as we go through each budget, as we had in the past, as a member of the committee has a question to either the Board of Selectmen or the town administrator or the town accountant, we will address it directly to them and turn the floor over. Just wanted, you know, we learned a lot doing this through Zoom last year. So I hope that we will be able to do one of our meetings, or at least our last meeting when we start to make the recommendations, is a potential live meeting at Old Town Hall. The reason I wanted to do the first one that way is a combination Zoom and or live, but Old Town Hall was booked for tonight. So with the lack of meeting space available to do it, we will do as much of this on Zoom as we can, and then preferably at some point do something live. But if someone doesn't feel comfortable, it will still be a Zoom meeting. So that's what I have. Since this is the town administrator's first meeting with the FinCom, I'd like, Mike, I'll give you the floor for a couple minutes if you'd like, from an opening standpoint.
Yep. So yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to members of the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom as well. As the FinCom may know, I've been working for the town just for a little over a month now. I come to the town from the county of Norfolk, where I served as a county director, then as assistant county director for about 4 years, and then for the past 5 years I've also served so as a member of the Rockland Board of Selectmen. My term just ended there, and I've also served as the chief of staff to the former mayor of Brockton, and also as a member of the school committee in Rockland as well, my hometown. So, like I love Dayton already. The reception I've had from everybody in Dayton has been incredible. Everything that I've heard about the FinCom has been great. Like really one of the things that really impressed me starting last fall, going through and doing the research about Dayton was its actually fiscal position. And I really think that's a credit to the FinCom and the board, like for the years really of really strong fiscal discipline. And I just want to thank you and recognize the FinCom and the board for those efforts. I mean, you can really see it, going through DLS and DOR, and looking at all the trends and the look backs that they actually provide everybody the ability to do so. So that said, I started on the 8th of March. I really have been trying to hit the ground running with the budget process with the selectmen and with department heads. Thankfully, a lot of the process was already underway. And together with the Board of Selectmen, with Karen and Leanne in our office, and with Chris Lavallette, the budget process had already moved forward to a really good degree. Over the past month, actually Chris and I have worked together, and together with the board to really make sure we were looking at our revenues. And as I'm trying to understand what's behind every line item and so forth, we really wanted to be disciplined and conservative about actually where we're going into the next fiscal year. And if I can share my screen just to provide a very brief overview. 1 second, just bear with me if you could. You will see on the spreadsheet, that beginning last week, I have been incorporating messages into the spreadsheet to the FinCom. You've seen that the town accountant has actually included where we are in terms of stabilization fund balances, where we are with the ambulance fund as well, and the sewer retained earnings. In the next tab over, you can see where our free cash balance is, up until the last special town meeting in November. And then the town meeting warrant is open till the close of business on Thursday. And you can see so far the warrant articles that have been received that have a cost associated with them as well. And you can see one of the warrant articles will be a $260 final installment of the FY21 assessment. So in essence, that will be essentially the first, where we'll bring the $900,000 down to about $640,000, I believe, very quickly. And then from the operational budget, from free cash or other sources, we'll have the ability to discuss the additional articles that have been proposed. And just going forward, I understand based on our conversation with you, Mr. Chairman, and with the town accountant, where the FinCom actually starts every year in terms of this whole conversation is taking a look at where the excess levy capacity is. And right now, the excess levy with the departmental requests, it's at $412,000. Those are based on the departmental requests. Then when you go over to the departmental overview, you can see that the Board of Selectmen's recommendation has excess levy capacity increased to 584,000 to the good. So, that is really an important watermark that I already understand here. And, that's really been kind of like the watershed that I keep looking at. But again, I mean, I understand fiscal discipline is important. One of the things, actually going forward beyond town meeting, that I really want to try to take a look at, is forecasting out fiscal years, and really together with Mr. Rendon, in the capital outlay committee, really incorporating a capital schedule into that as well. So we have a lot of work to do, but I believe right now, just actually where we are in the budget process, we're in a good place. And we have about a month and a half until town meeting, Mr. Chair. So that is all I have tonight. If there's any questions before we get started with the budgets.
Thanks, Mike. So if you can jump back to your updated message to the FinCom.
Yep.
And if you can just control the sharing tonight, that way we can move back and forth. So
yep, absolutely. Yep.
So just as we, in the past, we've always started with having the town accountant available for questions on the overview, as well as the Board of Selectmen, and then we get into the individual budgets. So just a couple of points on I think you had a question, and I think I just so everyone knows that you and I had a discussion on it today, was the Finance Committee's use of the ambulance fund. Mm-hmm. I explained to the town administrator how we have utilized that based on the findings of the audit, since about 75 to 80% of our fire department budget is used on ambulance. And in the past, we were not using ambulance fund basically for one employee, that we started using that as a transfer based on what the revenues are and the needs of the town, and from a better accounting principle. So I explained that to him today and went through it, and I think you're good with that now, Mike. You understand what our principle was on that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Absolutely.
Okay. So as we look at our balances going forward, it looks like the projections for the end of the year and what we have in stabilization is in a good. We're in a good situation. One of the things that I was hoping to do, depending on where free cash falls out at the end of June, was to rebuild our capital stabilization a little bit. We have taken some significant chunks out of it in the last couple of years. That was around $1 million. But we'll see as we get through this process. I'm a little concerned looking at all of the articles that have been submitted to date for special articles. There are a significant amount that we need to have some discussion on, and as those get closed up, and we have our meeting in a couple of weeks on special articles. I'm sure we will talk to Mr. Ferry tonight about his request to prioritize where those ones would fall. And just so no one has any additional questions on the DR assessment, that is because the school committee never accepted what we voted at town meeting last year, nor did we have an additional special to fund that during this fiscal year prior to us, since they didn't set the budget officially till December 1st, and we had already got ready to set our tax rate. We didn't have the ability to make an adjustment, although the school committee knows where I feel that, before we went to town meeting last year, there was a discussion at the school committee meeting, and they were all in agreement, except for those who weren't at the meeting, and then they suggestively afterwards decided not to do what they did not vote on, but, agreed to prior to us going to town meeting. But we can have that discussion with them when we meet with them. So any questions from the committee to the town administrator before we get started? Oh, so we'll get started. So Mike, if you can jump to just the schedule real quick. So as I said earlier, the police and the fire department will move, and those are two of the bigger ones, will move to next week. This week and beginning of next week, we will get through the bulk and the big departments. And then we'll follow the schedule through. Hope to have that in early May or mid-May, we will have completed all of our recommendations. So we can, has the board set town meeting date yet?
June 7th.
June 7th. So we will be done at least 2 weeks before that, so it can get, so our recommendations can be published in the warrant. So if you want to jump to the town meeting proposed specials, actually to the my front page, what I call the front page, Mike.
Yes, and that is this page, right, Ed?
Yes, yes. So you start at the top.
Yep.
So as we've done in the past, I've asked the town administrator and the town accountant to plug in the department requests, as well as the anticipated state aid based on the governor's budget, as well as all of the other, we've done this, you guys are familiar with this sheet. And then our expected local receipts are based on current year. Mike, is that on, and Chris, what did we use on estimated local receipts?
Yeah, so like we did a current year where the cherry sheets are projected, like for FY22, and then just actually going into our revenues, you can see that the town accountant, especially with our local receipts, the town accountant and I, we did look backs based on trends from FY20 to 21. Then there were like a few numbers that were skewed that we thought the first one is in line 48 with licenses and permits. So then we went through and I actually went and took a 5-year look back at what exactly not the projected revenues were, but the realized revenues. And then did a 5-year look back on that and then took 90%, actually 95% of the 5-year average there.
So can I ask a question to the town accountant? If in that $551,000, how much of that was the one-time Bristol Aggie licenses?
I don't know that exact amount, Ed.
I believe that in our projection, we need to take out all of the Bristol Aggie licenses and permits, because we are not going to have a project of that size and that scope that pays permits to the town. And I think that is, even at 95% of the 5-year average, is skewing that number to be at 445,000. When you look back the previous 3 years and the high water mark is 300,000, to be at 445,000 and having a project of that scope, I think we're way over skewed.
Understood.
I think you've plugged in probably about $200,000 too much in that receipt.
So yeah, again, there are like other receipts that go into that as well, that aren't as front and center, like as the Aggie building and the permit fees, but we'll definitely take a look at that again.
Yeah, I mean, because in those previous years where it's 226, 242, and 306, those are actuals, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. All right, so can you go back to that front
Oh,
page?
yep, sorry.
Anybody
Okay.
have any questions on that? On the thoughts on that? Okay. All right, so if you can go down to the bottom, because I'm still confused from what we used to look at in this whole excess capacity, gross estimated. That's not how we've always looked at the excess capacity net of debt exclusion. So we would show that we would be, our starting point today, this is without any special articles, is $244,000 over the levy limit. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. So if you look at and you add and you put the $1.3 million that are the requests on the special articles, so technically we are about 1.5 million over the levy limit. And if you take my questioning 200,000 in revenue, then technically our starting point is based on would be about 1.7 million over the levy limit. That's if we did nothing, which we know some of those articles, you know, the one on the for the fire department on that truck is we'll probably look at the lease payment because that's what we've done in the past. So there's 500,000 there. So and some of that stuff will come out of free cash. It won't come out of the revenue. So that's the starting point. I think that is a little bit of a misconceived number. I think it's probably 500,000 to 700,000 when you take into account the receipts. I think it's a little bit of a low projection. So we will go through the budgets individually and just track that as we go through. But I think we're closer to about 600,000 over the levy limit, because I'm trying to, if you look at, so for new money this year, we have, can you slide up to the 2.5 plus growth?
Oh, yep, sorry, I just screwed up.
That's okay.
Okay, here we go.
No, too far, Mike.
Oh, yep,
There you
okay,
go.
that's-
So 2.5 plus growth is about just over 700,000, right? So, and our total budget in the increase in requests in our total budget. Can you go to the last page of the regular budget, which shows total from FY21 and total requests of FY22? Which is at the end of the budget sheets.
okay. Bear with me.
Yeah, no problem. I know it's a little tough when, you know, we had those papers we used to flip in front of us.
So at the end, Mr. Chair?
Yep. At the end of the town budgets. It would be, hold on. I have it on another screen, so.
Mike, go to the master budget tab.
Yes, I am. Can you see it?
No, you're not there yet.
Oh, okay, on the tab. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, maybe it's, yeah, it is. It's probably on the first page, right?
Is it this one?
No, Mike, go to the bottom of the master budget tab, not the budget overview.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Here we go.
Yeah, go all the way to the bottom now.
Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Trying to make a good impression here, everybody.
Yeah, it's okay. It's a long sheet, so.
Sorry, I'm gonna move my Zoom over. Here we go.
There you go, general government. So our FY21 budget was 22,751,000. And then the FY22 request, if you can just slide over.
Yep. 24,076,000.
Which is, I don't have my calculator in front of me.
About $1.2 million.
So if we had $1.2 million.
Actually, Ed, it's right. Sorry,
Oh yeah, 1.325. Thanks.
Yeah.
Chris. Right in front of me. So we had requests of 1,325,000. We have new money of about 700,000. And we're taking our receipts down, right? Based on even with your 5-year rolling. And that's how I'm trying to understand how we are only we only show a $244,000 over the levy limit when I think it's closer to 700,000. If we only had new money of 700,000, where's the additional $400,000 coming from?
I understand.
So I'm not going to ask you to answer it tonight, but we do need an answer to that. That's
Yeah, no, I get it. Yep.
We do need to, as we get through this, we'll start talking about the individual budgets. But as I look at it, I believe that the number we're starting with is about $700,000 over the levy limit, which is similarly to where we start every year, $700,000 to $1 million. I know we've gotten the assessors to agree to additional new growth, different from what the 150 we've always gotten from them at the beginning of every year. You guys were able to talk to the assessors to get it over 200. Yes, we started with a higher number, so we have 2.5 is when you start with a higher number, 2.5 of a higher number is a higher number. So I get that, but I keep coming back to it that I think that 250,000 over the levy limit is not a fair assessment to it. So
Understood.
I just want that out front. We'll work off of pulling it together, but before we get to the recommendations, we have to come to an agreement of where that number really falls. And I'll leave that to the Board of Selectmen, the town administrator, and the town accountant to get back to us with just identifying if it's really is that number or not. So.
Absolutely.
Okay. I know the rest, for the most, Robert and Kevin, you guys have been around a long time. Do you see anything different than what I see out of that?
No, I was seeing the same thing.
Okay.
Nothing else I've noticed.
Okay. All right. Thanks. And Catherine, please feel free to jump in with any questions. We want, we like this to be really interactive.
Yep, sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. So, all right. So let's get into some of the individual department budgets. And actually, before that, do any of the Board of Selectmen have anything they want to add before we get into the individual budgets?
I don't.
I have nothing.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And thank our newest Board of Assessor for joining us tonight. Member of the Board of Assessors for joining us tonight.
Madam Assessor.
All right. So we'll start with the Board of Selectmen's budget, which is the budgets that fall under the Board of Selectmen, which is starts at 122. Budget number 122.
I'm just going to zoom out a little bit so everyone can see the whole.
Yep.
Okay.
So, just as for explanation purposes, and I'm assuming it was something that was negotiated or additional hours on the administrative assistant going up 19.9%.
Yeah.
Line 5111.
Yes, that was, hold on a second, I'm having problems with Zoom trying to, yes, so, what the note, so she was, actually given a credit for her previous service working for a municipality, which brought her up to, grade 6, with a 2% increase, and then with 5 additional hours, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any
Mr.
questions?
Chairman,
Yes.
thank
Hey,
you,
can I
sir.
ask a question? Who is the chairman of the Board of Selectmen?
It's
Pacheco.
Selectman Pacheco.
Okay, thank you.
I
didn't
just
want to
wanted
say Mr. Chairman to you if you weren't the chairman anymore.
I just wanted to add that part of the reason, Mr. Chairman, that the 5 hours we believe was warranted, and I know we're in a tough fiscal year, is because the Board of Selectmen has, and even Selectman Hull has expressed a desire and a willingness to want to continue hybrid meetings and to also encourage the other boards and committees and commissions to continue hybrid meetings after the pandemic. And Mrs. Kerwin will be responsible as the administrator of the Zoom account for coordinating and setting those meetings up. So it is an added workload, and I know it's a lot of work. So I just wanted to highlight what that 5 hours entails, and also the regular website administration and helping the other boards. Thank you.
Any questions on the salaries portion? Because I know I have a couple of questions on the expense portion. Any members of the board?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay.
No.
So I'm assuming on line 5341, the commingled billing, that since it is commingled billing, we are moving something from somewhere else? That it shows a $20,000 increase?
No, Ed, I believe, so everything that's commingled has already been done previously. I think the request is based on the fact that through through December 31st, you've spent almost all of the budget. The budget at December 31st was 20. We spent 19,673. So that's only half. We've spent the entire budget in 6 months, and we still have 6 months. Well, at the time, we would have 6 months to go.
So what caused the increase from last year's request? Does someone have an idea why because in FY 19 we spent 22, in FY 20 we spent 30. I'm assuming that the request last year was done based on were we going to uncommingle, or if we're spending 40 this year, I don't understand why we didn't know that going into last year, when actually we spent 31,000 last year. I don't remember any reason why we only put 20 in there last year. Why we underfunded that budget. I know
So yeah, I can look into that further, Mr. Chair, and get back to you on
Okay.
exactly why.
Okay. And then what is the 3,900 under the green communities? Line 5342. Oh, we're taking that out this year? Or we didn't spend it last year? Is that what the case was?
Yes, it was funded this year, but we're not proposing to fund it in FY 22.
So none of that 3,900 is going to get spent this year?
We're working to actually finish out our Green Communities grant round now. So, and that would go towards it.
Oh, so we are planning on spending that before the end of the fiscal year?
Yes.
but we don't believe we'll need any funding for that department, for that line item next year.
Exactly.
Okay, okay. And I'm assuming 5344 is a new committee looking for funding?
Yes, that's correct.
Can we just get some background on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit of background on what that $1,000 is going to be spent on?
Well, if you see, there's two items that they're looking for. They plan on having speakers come in and talk to the community, as well as sending out some literature and spend some money on supplies. This is a new committee that was formed. I'm the liaison person for the Human Rights Committee. As Dayton becomes more and more diverse, it was felt by the Board of Selectmen that we ought to have a Human Rights Committee. And their proposed budget was for $2,000. $1,000 obviously for communication, $1,000 for supplies.
So can we get some kind of communication from that committee that shows a breakdown of what they're looking to spend it on during this fiscal year? This is no different than when we had the Economic Development Committee coming in asking for $2,500. I know in the big scheme of thing, it's $1,000, but I just want a little more detail of what their plan on how they plan on spending the money, rather than us creating a new budget and putting $2,000 out there that at the end of next year, we're sitting here saying, hey, we gave you $2,000, you didn't do anything with it, which we've had happen numerous times with new committees that get developed. I'd just like to see what the plan is and how they plan on expending the funding.
Okay, and when do you want that by?
Just at the end, sometime next week, before we deliberate to make our recommendations,
Okay, so
probably in the next couple of weeks.
yeah, they're not meeting until the first Tuesday in May, but
Lucy, thanks, George Floyd.
So, Mr. Administrator, could you reach out to the chairman of that committee and just ask if they could provide us with some additional information?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
To both the chairman, Chairman Pacheco and Chairman Swartz, I believe when Chairman Cassidy of the Human Rights Committee sent us his request, it is in Excel format, and I believe there is a breakdown. So
okay,
we can forward that to you. Absolutely.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you. That'll help.
Mr. Swartz,
Yes, Mrs. Goulart.
going back to 5341, communications commingled. These budget sheets are 8.5 by 14. I don't know if you can see way over to the far right. There's a note that says additional departments added to this account. So I'm thinking additional money equals additional departments. This year we're in, those departments may have been budgeted elsewhere. Does anyone know if that's what this means? In other words, in the 21 budget, there are departments that have communications lines in their department budget, but they're being pulled out for FY22 and put here. Is that what that note means?
So, thank you, Mrs. Goulart. I will, if the town administrator and the town accountant can get together on that and let us know some more details on that, I would appreciate it, because I think that's the initial question that I asked, is there money being moved from other budgets that was budgeted previously in other budgets that are moving to make this the 40,000. So if you guys can do a little bit more research on that before we do our deliberation.
There's the note right there. What I just read.
Yeah, it doesn't, but it doesn't say which budgets it's moving from.
No, I realize that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Chair.
thank you.
No problem.
All right, so let's go through each of the budgets that fall under the Board of Selectmen. That would be
124, Town Administrator.
Yep.
And I'm just gonna I have notes here that I just want to be seen as well. So This budget is pretty straightforward. I'd be happy to take any questions.
So, since I see what your recommendation on your own salary is, that that is your negotiated salary is the 120?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chair.
Okay, okay.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to be clear. I made those recommendations. It was not Town Administrator Mullen. It was me before he had arrived. Sorry.
Okay. So are we utilizing the, I know with COVID, it's made it difficult, but do we have a plan to utilize the intern program for this year?
Yes, we do. It's actually being utilized as we speak. We are onboarding, as we speak, an intern who's going to work under my direction and under the direction of the fire chief and the emergency preparedness committee. And he
Okay.
will work approximately between 10 and 12 hours a week beginning next week.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Any questions on the town administrator budget at this time from any members of the committee?
No.
Okay.
Hey, Ed,
Yes,
is it possible that he increases the size of that screen just a hair?
Oh, yeah.
Somebody in the audience had asked, and it is a little small. If you can make it a little bit, I don't want it to go off the screen, but at the same token, so we can see it better.
Is that better?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
and to the person that asked, is that better for you? You can send it back in the chat.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. And then I'll, I think there was one other question from Mr. Smith about a project like Forest Hills. That wouldn't be, just as the question was, what kind of, when we were talking about the permitting fees,
Right.
What kind of permit fund would impact a project like Forest Hills, and I'm assuming like Strawberry Fields, that would be over time, unlike a big project like the Bristol Aggie project was, a big commercial, more of a commercial development that has much larger fees. Projects like Forest Hills and Strawberry Fields would be more residential and would be similar to what we got in a normal year for residential building permits. So I hope that answers the question. If you have anything further, Mr. Smith, just send another quick message. But thanks for your question. Okay, next, so, Mike, one of the things, could you add to, I didn't see it, I meant to ask you this earlier, can you add to next week's meetings the FinCom budget and the reserve fund for discussion?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Next up, I believe would be that falls under the Board of Selectmen would be the Town Council budget. 151.
Should be up, Mr. Chair.
So it, you know, we've increased this budget significantly over the last 2 or 3 years based on needs of lawsuits and things that will be that may be coming up. And Mike, I know you mentioned to me, good lead in, some of the things that the town is going to have to address with a project like Forest Hills and the ongoing project with Strawberry Fields. I'm not sure if the town council line is the proper place for any additional funding, but I don't know if maybe you want to talk about that.
So yeah, just very generally, I mean, just my opinion right now, Mr. Chair, and members of the FinCom, what I would, and we actually had a discussion, just as an example, with the Conservation Commission this afternoon. We want to make sure that as individual departments go forward in their budgets, that if they need any that if they need additional technical review funding or consulting funding, that we have the ability to adjust and propose that now, going into FY22, so we can have that conversation. So we are doing that work and trying to get to the bottom of that answer and that question, as soon as possible. I'm hoping by next week we'll be able to provide a little more clarity, if there is additional resources that will be needed in that regard. But as of right now, anyways, I don't see it being in the town council budget.
Okay. Because in order to, if it becomes illegal, I think, and any of the Board of Selectmen that were on the board at the time can correct me, is in order for us to use outside counsel, not to fight any appeals or anything like that, that has to run through town council to approve utilizing an outside law firm, correct? I think that's what we-
That's correct.
That's what we had to do with the previous Somerset Woods project, was that Attorney Gay's office, along with the Conservation Commission, signed off on that we use someone outside of the town council's office because of it was a specialty project. So just as an FYI, that's why I asked, should that funding go under a special line in town council, conservation? But I appreciate that you'll have more information for us next week.
Thank you.
Mr. Schwartz?
Mrs. Goulart.
Excuse me, what I will mention is, we did use town council for 2 pilot agreements that have already been approved and signed in this fiscal year. We will be hopefully having 1 pilot going to the annual town meeting if we can get all the paperwork, so those legal fees would come out of this year's budget.
Okay.
If we don't get all that paperwork, it's going to go into the next year. But even in FY22, there are 2 that I know of, and a possible third, and legal has to get involved with all of those, even though we have, I'll call it boilerplate. And also we had to have a license agreement drawn for one of the pilot agreements, which is something we've never done before. So these were some extra things. I'm not asking for extra money, but I just want you to know there are some recurring expenses that we haven't had to deal with in the past.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like based on where we were at 12/31, that we have plenty of money to get us through from a legal standpoint for FY21. So unless there's a lot of things that haven't come in yet, we're only 3 months out. We have less than a quarter left. So,
Yeah, just don't jinx it, Mr. Chair.
say that again.
Yeah, just don't jinx us.
Okay, I won't. I'll try not to.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
would it be helpful to you and the rest of the committee to update
Yes.
actual expenditures and the remaining budget through March 31st?
And that would be great.
Okay.
Mr. Town Accountant, that would be wonderful. That would help a lot. Next would be the new, I'm assuming the new department request of Department 174, the Trails Committee, falls under the Board of Selectmen?
No. I don't think so. They used to.
Who, okay. Then who would that budget fall under?
What's going on?
I don't know, but it used to be under our budget, but it's a separate budget now, so I'm not sure if it's under our
Mr.
guidance.
Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Zagrafsky.
thank you, sir. The Dayton Trails Committee is no longer under the Board of Selectmen. This is their first year, so they would speak to their own budget, I would assume.
Okay.
Sorry for any confusion.
Yeah, no problem. If, Mr. Town Administrator, if you could add them to somewhere into next week's presentation, that would be great.
Well, I apologize for that.
That's okay.
Okay.
Let's see. Rolling through here, the next would be public buildings, 192.
Okay. Here we are. And I'll just scroll over. Okay. Actually, I want to go back to, okay.
No major, I'm assuming no major changes to this budget from,
N- No, just actually, just going down the list, one of the major items, but not major relatively speaking, but something we are actually in the process of working actually to adjust. As we move forward in 5450, I am going to be recommending that we do very modestly increase 5450, which is currently approved at $12,000 to $15,500. The reason for that is over the last week and a half, the town accountant and I have been actually going through the cleaning company bills and the reimbursements that we're seeking through actually CARES Act reimbursements. However, with the expectation, unfortunately, that COVID or some form of it will be continuing for actually a while, we are we do have to anyways put the contract out to bid this year. Anticipating our true costs now, I'm proposing at this point, based on our true costs that we have, and then our true cost right now is $1165 a month, which that compounded out, I think it's just under $14,000. So we put a little bit of buffer there just in the event, we have increases in procurement that we have to deal with. But that's really I just wanted to bring that increase to everyone's attention.
so noted for when we make our recommendations.
Okay. Then,
So with that point, can you in the doc change your recommendation to what your you believe your recommendation is, and then I would so did the Board of Selectmen recommended 12, so you guys did not want to change what the department request was to that number, is that just was something that came up after you guys discussed that budget line?
So yeah, if I could, Mr. Pacheco, yes, this has come up actually since then. Just in doing our due diligence, I'm trying to get actually my arm around any contract that is expiring at the end of this fiscal year and making sure that everything we need to get out to bid prior to the end of the fiscal year, that we get a jump on now. And this is one of the areas that, I've been drawn into based on the fact that the contract has expired.
Okay. So just keep that as a note when we get to our recommendation point, because that's probably a realistic topic for discussion.
And then if I could, Mr. Chair, in 5871, in the Board of Selectmen budget, we had actually $5,000 for a copier that we paid for, but together with the planning office, I believe, we are moving those copies into the shared equipment line item we're proposing. So there's a $5,000 offset that's already funding that 11,700. Why there is not a similar type of offset already in the planning budget? Is because the funding that the planning department is currently using to pay, actually their copy machine services is actually currently coming from a warrant article. So once,
Yeah. So can I ask why that's not in the departmental request? Because that skews all of the numbers if it's not in the departmental request.
yes, that is actually the reason. I understand your frustration. That was added actually in the TA recommendation process.
Okay, so can we, before we meet the next time, could you go through and make sure that all of the departmental requests are updated to match what we really truly need requested? Things like this 11.7, things like the 15.5. You know, that really skews. You know, we have to have a true starting point, and we just don't have a true starting point. So.
No, understood.
Okay, thank you. Any questions before we move to the next selectmen's budget, which is building insurance? Because public buildings is always a big one. Okay. Building insurance. I don't think, no major changes to this, correct?
No, thankfully.
And you've met with our, with Mr. Bickle and they feel comfortable that the rates are gonna come in the same?
Yes, we have that process actually going on right now in terms of our renewal. Yes, and they don't have any, they feel confident.
Okay,
So we do have a little bit of wiggle room as it is, just for a buffer.
okay. I think that's it for the selectmen's budget. Did I miss any? Let's just jump to the town accountant. I know we're running a little bit behind here, but you know, that's normal for us,
One more, sorry.
at least on the first night. Does data processing still fall under the town accountant's number?
Chris, you muted?
Who's muted?
Unmuting.
Oh.
Mr. Chairman, the data processing costs are all in Department 155.
Yeah, and they're all broken out by which department they fall under now, because we used to just have one number.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Oh, no, sorry about that. I'll tab over. Oh, why can't I tab over? Okay.
There we go. So on budget 135, I know our assistant town accountant retired. Have we backfilled that position already?
We have.
Oh, good.
Sorry, gentlemen, I got to step away from the computer for a second.
So we'll go back to the town accountant since Mr. Ferry is here and ready. Can we jump to the highway department?
Absolutely.
Go to 422, Mike.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There we go. Okay. And
So, Mr. Ferry, do you want to just give us a quick overview on your general budget? And then if we have any questions on it?
Yes, we attempted to level fund it. The part-time line has gotten some attention both in the 422, 432, and we're presenting the solid numbers here after meeting with the selectmen on that. You'll see a drastic change in the numbers, but especially in the 432, they look odd, but they are correct. And the other thing on the 432, when we get to that, we added the sweeper, the lease payment for the sweeper. We added that to the lease line, and I'm not sure which one. When we get there, we got to make sure it's 52,000 and change, not just 50 and change to cover, so I can still lease other equipment also.
So did we, when we did the lease on that last year, was that done as a special article for the first year, or was it in the budget?
It was
Special article.
Special article.
I know it's probably not a good accounting practice to leave it as a special article because it could fail in the second year. But I know it's been a long time since when we did a lease buy program in your department before, Tom, was it always done by putting it into the lease or into the lease line, or did we always leave them as special articles?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. As long as I can remember, we have not done a lease program yet.
Okay. But I believe like when we've done lease programs in the fire department on vehicles and such, we've always done them as special articles year in and year out. And
Yes.
always presented to the town as if it was year one, year two, year three.
Correct.
The town's obligated to it, but I know from, since it's a short-term recurring expense, I would prefer to see it as a special article. I don't know what the rest of the committee feels on that. Robert, since you're the capital equipment guy, capital outlay committee, what's your thoughts?
I've been carrying them in my capital outlay spreadsheet that I've used in the past. So knowing that those are planned, it allows us to plan for those larger purchases. From a capital outlay perspective, it's kind of immaterial whether it's a special article or part of the budget, department budget. I think it just calls I think what it does is it normalizes our standard operating budget and calls out extraordinary expenses that will expire based upon the term of the lease. So, I mean, from my personal standpoint, I'm a proponent of keeping them as special articles.
Yeah, can we make a note of that? That you said that's not in the current, that's in 432, not 422, right, Tom?
Correct. 432. That's under stormwater cleaning up. Yes.
Okay. So just keep that as we get through the process as a note. If you can put that, if Mike, if you could note these on some of these things like that on the first page or on the notes page. I'd like to go back for further discussion. Kevin or Catherine, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Do not.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay, thanks. Okay, any questions of the committee on the 422 budget? Just the standard, the highway department operating budget.
Sorry, I'll go back to that. So I went to the street sweeper.
Yeah, that's fine.
I set you up.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm used to that already, Mr. Ferry.
No, I think we're good on 422. 423, how did we finish this year, Tom? I know it's probably on the first page, but snow and ice?
Yes, and so grand total would be 150,527.
Could have been worse.
Yes, and I was hoping to speak with Mr. Perry before I did it, but we were able to use that fluid film on the whole fleet this year also for preventative maintenance, and a dramatic difference already. I noticed it. It's good stuff.
Good. So just from an, just so Catherine's aware, so snow and ice budget, Catherine, is the only budget that can be overexpended during the fiscal year and doesn't have to be fully funded at the beginning of the year under state law. So the Department of Revenue actually recommends that you don't fund it because it's an unknown. So they let you overexpend that every year.
Okay.
So you never want to put it too high because you can't take it back once you do.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
Just as
Sounds good.
as an FYI. The Dighton Berkeley Bridge, nothing exciting going on there, huh, Tom?
Still 2 lights out. We'll just want to keep that line there so we have an avenue for expenses as they occur.
Okay. It is one of the nicest spots in town.
Only when you're 20 miles an hour.
So the aforementioned 422. So that's 50, it's 52,000 is the lease, Tom? 52,562 or 50,562 is the lease, and the other 2,000 is other equipment?
Yes, and that's
Okay.
under 432, correct.
Okay, so that's under 5270 of 432. So we'll note and make a determination if we want that. When are the special can you, as a placeholder, Tom, submit a special article for that?
Yes,
So we
I believe
have,
it.
so we
I
have
believe
the
I have
ability
until
to do
Thursday,
it
right.
either way,
Okay,
okay? Selectman, you're okay with that?
Yes,
Okay.
I am.
Okay, thank you. Next one, I believe, for Tom would be cemetery?
yes.
491, Mike.
Yep. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, Mike, we used to have a sheet that former Selectman Goulart put together that had the numbers on them.
Yes, I have it in my binder right next to me, but trying to do Zoom and
The
Google.
sheet, the cheat sheet that we all use.
Yeah, that one's
So-
pretty straightforward. With the contract extension, which is in the contract, we can do that. Everything should stay the same.
Okay. Any questions on cemetery?
Nope.
And then COA 541, Mike? So I know this is probably a hard question. What is the planned 2022 direction for Council on Aging in prime time?
That is a hard question. I actually asked our health agent to drill the state informants this week with that question. Other countries are already entertaining adult daycare now, long as everyone's staff and clients have the shots. So we're hoping that can be considered sooner than later. Originally, it was considered during phase 4, which is probably the end of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But, that's not healthy to leave them locked up that long.
Okay.
So to answer your question, I don't know.
So what do we have in 542 as a prime time budget? So there's still 77,000 funded in that. Obviously, there is no funding that's coming in at this time.
Are you looking at the revolving?
Yeah,
Correct. There's nothing coming in.
yeah. So,
All the staff are laid off, and prior to the pandemic, we moved Sheila into the COA budget.
yeah,
So that's, fortunately, we don't have the
yeah.
loss
So,
of funding
so
there.
it's, so do we, and this is more directed at the Board of Selectmen, do we expect, because I know we've had a lot of discussions about this program, do we expect that we will, if allowed by the state to open back up, that we are going, and what is the feeling of the council, the Board of the Council on Aging, that we will reinstate this program?
I'll speak for myself. I'm going to support the program whenever we can open up again safely for the patients. I'll be supporting it.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes, Mr. Hall.
through you, I would totally agree with Mr. Pacheco on that position.
Yeah, my question becomes to it though, what is our plan to get clients back to the program? Because I think we all agree that it's a very valuable program. That's why we continue to support it year in and year out. And even when it got financially difficult, we made the necessary moves of moving stuff into the regular budget versus the prime time budget. But I think, and I'll leave this in the hands of the Board of Selectmen, Council on Aging, and the town administrator, that we have to have a good plan to bring clients back in that will support the program. And I think it's great to say we'd love to open it, because I think we can all agree on that. But I think we have to have a plan as a town on how we're going to support bringing the program back.
Right. If I may, we did have a plan back when we had the H1N1.
Yep.
Very, very similar to this.
Okay.
And actually, we're probably going to need some legal counsel just before we initiate that new policy, because we need to know if it's an infringement on the HIPAA law with this, proving that you had the shot and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. So I'm assuming we'll leave it in the budget and wait for more direction from the Council on Aging and state guidelines on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions from the committee on that?
No, sir.
Thank you.
No.
All right. Tom, do you have any other budgets that we haven't gone through yet?
No, it's just a special, the warrant
Yeah,
article, but that's next week.
Special articles have its own meeting.
Right.
Unless anyone has, so I would just ask that on your requests that you have submitted on the special articles, that you list them in priority order. And I know we always end up having the discussion, what can possibly wait till later on. And if you can just put some notes and provide them to the town administrator so he can add them to the notes, that will help us as we continue the process.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ferry. Next up, and we're only 20 minutes behind, but we'll make some of that up because we don't have the police and fire department. ADA is budget number.
549.
Thank you.
Thank you. Five.
549, Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't.
That's okay.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay, so I will ask the question again. So similar to what we had, because we've had this, we went through this whole process last year. And I think the finance committee was amenable at the end on some things. But I think and I asked other members of the finance committee to jump in, that we believe that this should fall under a department within the town or a current employee within the town, whether it be the town administrator, that's how other communities do it. And I see a request in here for a significant increase that I'm kind of taken aback from where we were last year, that now we're looking for 4 times on an item that we had a long discussion on last year, that so I leave that to the Board of Selectmen and to the Commission on Disability to tell us on why we're taking this to a whole nother level from where we discussed last year to this year. And I will open the floor up on that.
Mr. Chair, this is Mr. Gale. Can you hear me?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Gale. Welcome.
Okay. And if I lose you, I'm going to apologize ahead of time because I am not local. I'm down south at this point.
Okay.
But the reason for the significant increase was our original proposal to the Board of Selectmen this year, and I'll be as brief as I can. My person who put the budget together with me and shares thoughts with me, if you will, Jen Duszkowski, is not able to join us this evening. There may be other members of the commission who want to chime in as well in a moment. But our original request to the Board of Selectmen was significantly higher than the figure that you see in front of you now, which is the $8,000 for the coordinator, the $4,320 for the administrative support, and I'll go back to that in a minute. And then the small amount for training and supplies for a little over $14,000. The reason we came up with this figure and put this figure in was what we looked at was the amount of time that the coordinator, yes, there are commission members, they're volunteers. The coordinator, whomever that is, in this case, it's me right now, is putting in my case, for example, I'm right now putting in about 12 to 13, sometimes 14 hours a week because of the demand that was placed partly by COVID and requests from residents in COVID and helping to secure slots and get shots, things like that, partly because of other things that we've been involved in, quite a bit of grant development, working with Parks and Rec to put together an accessible playground. We've been asked now to work with the several departments within the school system to determine accessibility and accessible resources. We've been asked to work with specific residents in town on a number of areas that are private to those residents and that are not related to buildings, grounds, policy, procedure, but are there specifically ADA requests from residents that as the coordinator, I can't ask a volunteer or another person to do specifically, as you alluded to in something earlier, because of HIPAA, for example. So what we have found is that the actual amount of time being put in as the coordinator has significantly increased. And we expect that this is the way it's going to be for a long period of time because the town is really beginning to get going, if you will, or involved in assuring that a lot of the things within the town are compliance, not just the buildings and the grounds and the parks and the walkways, but that policies, procedures, et cetera, are also in full compliance. And that's a long-term process. If we remember last year, when we talked about the figure last year, we also noted at the time through the town administrator that we were submitting a grant to the Mass Office of Disability for a review of the town. That grant was approved. We finished that grant. We've gotten our report, which I don't know if you've had access to or not, is very, very lengthy, very long, talks about all of the different things that we need to do as a town to eventually become compliant with our ADA policies and procedures. And it's an extremely long list. There's a lot to do. So remember, we've never really addressed it in this way before. But in order to do that, in order to potentially avoid suit as well, if a resident ever did that, we need to be able to work on compliance, stay in a direction of compliance. The figure for the 4320 for the administrative assistant cost, that's based on a Title II absolute requirement. And I think Administrator Merlin can also speak to this part of it. But for that, I have a person who I have been working with, who I have paid a total last year, the total amount was about $42.70, actually, for time that she has to spend working with me. As you know, sir, I'm visually impaired. So in my case, there are many, many documents and many things I get and receive that are not accessible. So therefore, Her responsibility is to make those things accessible to me. Sometimes she's able to do it and transfer, a simple thing from the document from, for example, PDF to Word. Other times she has to read it to me line by line, page by page, because it won't transfer. Or if there's graphics, or when I have things that I put together very often, she has to review it to make sure what I'm doing in speech is coming out correctly in print for those people that have to see it, if it's a grant or it's a policy and a procedure, whatever it might be. So that's something that is required under Title II as well. I am paying that person currently, and the reason we talked about whether or not that person should be a town employee or not at one point, for example, and I think it was felt that this is still the best way to go because this person knows me, she knows how I work, she knows how to use the technology that I use as well. If we didn't have this person to work with an individual like myself, then the town would separately have to make investments in technology and resources and still provide admin support, which would actually end up being a higher cost. Having said that, on that note, because I certainly somebody could say, how do we know you're really spending that amount of money, for example, I 1099 her at the end of the year as a self-employed person. And I'm happy to provide that 1099 information to the town to validate that cost for that part of it. So in essence, I understand the question is how do we go from where we were to where we are now? But I also do remember at the finance committee discussion last year, when we talked about an original figure that was even higher than this for last year, the question was, let's see what it's needed first. Let's get this study done. Let's see what it shows we have to do. We've done that. We feel we can validate the need very, very easily by what's necessary to do the work that we do. And I'm going to again say, a lot of this work is not work that can be left to volunteers because of the nature of it and for the privacy of it. And a lot of the other work that has to be done is work that's done within, small groups within the town or the state, meeting with different folks, putting the packages together, putting plans together and so forth. So I don't know if you have any questions or if Mr. Mullen wants to add anything or if there's any other member of the commission who would like to add as well.
Okay, so I know Selectman Hull has something that he wanted to add, but I want to ask any other members of the finance committee first before I turn it over to Selectman Hull. Kevin, do you have anything, or Robert or Catherine?
No, I'm going to hold any questions I have right now.
Yeah, me too.
Same.
Robert?
Yeah, I want to hear some more information.
Okay.
All right.
Selectman Hull, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. I was simply a citizen during the budget discussions held at the Board of Selectmen deliberations. And I acknowledge that Mr. Gales has brought positive change to the town. However, I question whether it would be prudent at this time to pay a significant amount of money or increase in his salary. Has been mentioned this evening, many townspeople have also expressed concern that the budget is pretty tight. And I would hope that the FinCom would be interested in a compromise. $8,000 seems like a significant amount of money at this time. I'm urging that the FinCom look at a number that is win-win both for the town and something that Mr. Gales can also live with. It is clear that there is much that still needs to be done to bring the town into full ADA compliance. I know both Mr. Ferry and Mr. Aguirre have been involved in this effort. However, it is evident by the work that still needs to be done that both could use Mr. Gale's expertise. I have no question as to the importance of Mr. Gales. I just question whether the $8,000 is really doable at this time. I'd be curious to see what the recommendation of Mr. Mullen is in regards to this number as well. Justification for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Any other members of the Board of Selectmen have
Yeah,
anything they want to add?
sure, I'll speak. I'm in favor of the budget that's been proposed. You indicated the last year at the Finance Committee, that perhaps somebody else could take over the responsibilities. And if you remember, in the past, the selectmen used to be the ADA coordinator, but their job was to be reactive. Somebody had a complaint, then they will react to it. As you've just heard from Mr. Gale, he's proactive. We're trying to remove all the barriers for people with disabilities in town. It's not an easy task. I'm the liaison for the Commission on Disability, and I see all the work that the commission is doing, but more specifically, I see all the work and the experience and the knowledge that Mr. Gale has. So I'm fully supporting this. I see this as you know, Mr. Chairman, that the Board of Selectmen used to be the Board of Health. And because things have changed, things have expanded, there are different needs, we formed a committee on the Board of Health, and then we hired a Board of Health agent, and we have an assistant for the Board of Health agent. So we're not going to be reactive with the Board of Health, we're going to be proactive. So I see this as a similar situation. I understand that there's an increase in the stipend for the ADA coordinator. We're paying for his experience and his knowledge. And I think it's very important. And I would hate to see the town be sued because we don't have the proper, we haven't removed the barriers for the residents of this town. So I'm supporting the budget. Thank you.
Chico.
Oh, geez.
So Selectman Zagrafis, do you have anything you want to add?
I support the budget completely. I just wanted to say it was already a compromise from the original request, which was double what they had asked. So I do support it, sir. But I just wanted to caveat, that's just my opinion. I always, and going back to, since I've been here, Chairman Swartz, I respect the opinion and the recommendations of the Finance Committee, and I fully respect that they are independent of the recommendations that we make as the Board of Selectmen. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zagrafis. So I have a couple of points. First and foremost, we need to, this is all getting lumped in under the Commission on Disabilities. So are we separating what the commission's role is and putting a coordinator in place? Similar to when we had a Board of Health and we determined that we needed a health agent. So we added a health agent because before the Board of Health did all of that work. So is that what we are trying to accomplish here as we compare it to the Board of Health? That we are creating a position that falls under the Commission of Disability?
Well, the Board of Health, we have a Board of Health agent, but we also have a Board of Health committee also that meets on a regular basis. And the Board of Health agents participates in that, and they get advice from the Board of Health agent. So I don't see it any different than what we have for the Board of Health, with the exception that the commission members aren't going to get any stipends. The commission.
That was my question. So we're creating a new town position is what we're doing. We are not creating something that is a member of the Commission on Disabilities. We've created a new position in town.
Well, we've always had an ADA coordinator. Right? I'm not following.
No, but the ADA coordinator was not a town position with a stipend attached to it that becomes a quote. I'm not even sure how you define it. Is this a special employee of the town? I don't know where it would fall within that. Is it considered a special employee of the town? And Mike, I'll leave that in your hands to research it a little bit, because I think where Mr. Gale just mentioned, and one of the other committee members sent me a quick note, mentioned that he has dealings with the public and he's working on things for public entities. How does that fall as an employee of the town? Is he an employee of the town?
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Gale. It is my understanding. It is my understanding, and I can only speak from my understanding.
Yeah.
It is my understanding that as the coordinator, I am considered, even though I'm paid by stipend, that I am considered by the Commonwealth of Mass Office of Disability now to be an employee of the town. The commission itself has its own full set of extensive, very extensive actually, bylaws that we have worked through that are required by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Those bylaws have been approved by the commission and now approved by the Board of Selectmen and will be going to town meeting for approval. So that's the commission members who are the volunteers. My responsibility as the coordinator, or whoever the coordinator is, as a town employee, is to work. In fact, as you know from last year, if you remember, I have a very extensive job description. So I am required to meet the obligations and responsibilities of that job description or whomever the person is, as well as to coordinate the actions separately, if you will, but co-jointly, if that makes any sense. I know it's confusing, of the commission members who are volunteers. So the commission members are basically the liaisons between the community and the coordinator as the commission members. It's their responsibility to help determine procedure policy that dictates to some extent what the coordinator does when they can. There are a number of things that they can't, if you will, dictate, or I can't share because they're volunteers and I cannot violate HIPAA, as I said earlier, in certain aspects. As long as I'm staying within the policies and procedures of the town and the state when it comes to ADA requirement and policy and procedure, again, laid out by the Mass Office of Disability, from their perspective, I'm considered a town employee.
Yep. Thank you for answering that, because that was my question. So to the Board of Selectmen and to the town administrator, what department does the Commission on Disabilities coordinator fall under? If it is an employee, it doesn't report to the Commission on Disabilities. It needs to report to an established department within the town. It's unlike the Board of Health, which is a defined by state law department and set up in a specific state law manner. This employee of the town needs to fall within a town budget.
In most towns where there is a town administrator, the ADA coordinator is responsible for reporting directly to and taking direction from the town administrator, who's responsible for overseeing his or her job description.
I'd like to hear from the town administrator and from the Board of Selectmen. I appreciate the input, Mr. Gale, but we are being asked to basically establish a new position in town, increase the stipend to what is higher than most stipends we pay and significantly higher than most stipends we pay in the town. And it's not, in my opinion, not adequately laid out from a departmental standpoint and a direct responsibility standpoint as presented to us today. So as I do in the past, I'm not asking for give me a full answer tonight. I think it's something that the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator need to go back and research some more before you ask us to make a more significant increase to something that I think we were pretty clear on last year that we still think needs to be evaluated and placed within some department in town, and then discuss with that department how they want that role to be played. So I don't know if anyone else has any other, if town administrator has any thoughts or he wants some time to think about it. I'm fine with that. And I'll open it up to other board members who may have any comments, or any other members of the Commission on Disabilities that may be on here. I think Mr. Smith, if I'm correct, you're a member of that committee, if you want to chime in at all.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. This is Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to touch on it briefly. I think there's a lot of unknown with not only what the commission's doing, but with what Jonathan's doing. And Selectman Pacheco touched on it pretty well on what his role would be. And like he said, the $8,000 ask is a lot smaller than the original ask, which was actually brought up and discussed in the Commission on Disabilities meetings. And we've gone back and forth with the Board of Selectmen a few times. I know that Mr. Pacheco is well aware, and that's why he advocates so much for this ask, is because he sees the work that we're doing. And as a member of the Commission on Disability, I know that as a commission member, we wouldn't be able to accomplish anything that we've accomplished so far without Jonathan's expertise. So I think that the position, if the town moves towards making it an actual town employee, I think it's for the overall betterment of the town, and it definitely should be considered.
Yeah, so here's my one point to that, and I've been pretty consistent on this for the 19 years that I've been on the finance committee, is we don't create positions for people. We create the position for the purposes of the long building of the town. And I totally understand the value that Mr. Gale brings, but Mr. Gale won't be here for forever. And we have to make sure we look at it as we're creating a position, we're creating a position for the position and not for a person. And don't take that personally, Mr. Gale. It's not meant to be that way.
I actually agree.
I look at it from okay, 5 years down the road from here, if Jonathan Gale isn't the person that wants to do this, did we create a position that is a good long-term improvement to the town?
I do not take this personally at all. I don't know how many years I would be doing this for. I'm certainly hopeful that this is something that, once I'm gone, whoever has the reins is going to be able to do it. I hope I do it well and they'll do it even better than I do, but I don't take offense to that.
Yeah.
No worries.
Can I reply to that real briefly?
Sure.
I just mentioned Jonathan because that's the experience that we've had.
Yeah, no,
with Jonathan.
Right. Understood. Understood, Mrs. Smith.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, this is my buddy and I want him to have a job by any means. But I feel like just my involvement on the Commission on Disability so far and some other things that I've been looking into recently, that position's needed, because I think, throughout various town departments, we might, get close on some of these issues, but we won't get it right unless we have somebody in that position that has some level of expertise. I think a lot of people know like what some requirements are, but in this case, Jonathan seems to have a vast knowledge of what all the requirements are, and he's a huge help to many different departments.
Yes, and that's why I believe if we're going to create something like this, it has to have directionally, where is it going to fall within the town, because there has to be some responsibility and accountability within a department for something like this, and not something that is set up where the accountability is not within something that is under the control of the town. So that I'll leave my points at that, and we can have a financial discussion on it later, but I open it up to the rest of the committee. I know some of them held their points and didn't know if they had anything they wanted to add.
I have something I'd like to ask.
Sure.
I thought originally there was going to be a study done and the report would be made available. I'm curious to what the report findings were when it came back on the ADA study.
So the answer to your question is yes, there was an evaluation done. There was a full report that evaluated everything in the town, from streets, sidewalks, the public buildings, accessibility policies, procedures, manuals, internet ability, capability, everything. That report, I believe it was, and I don't know if it still is right now, but it was posted online for
on
anyone in the town.
On our town site.
Yes, it was, at one point I know it was posted by the prior town administrator. I don't know if it's still up there because the website is not accessible yet for me. So
I'd like an opportunity to view that. I'd like to get a copy of that.
I will
give me a link to where it can be found.
I can send it to you directly if you'd like. I'm away this week. If it can wait until the first of the week, or if you want it sooner, I can ask Leanne to forward it to you tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anybody else interested on the board, I wouldn't even mind it coming to the board, even if it goes to Ed and Ed can distribute it to us.
Yes.
I'd like to see the findings.
I know I did send a copy to the chairman of the finance committee a few months back, but that was a long time ago. I can have it resent.
I apologize, but Jonathan, I don't remember seeing it, but that, I get 9,000
that's okay.
emails.
I'll have it resent to all members of the finance committee tomorrow.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Catherine or Robert?
My main questions were around the coordinator stipend, but those have been answered, and we'll get more info about that. So that's great.
Thank you. Robert?
So I think my question was something that Mr. Gale had mentioned, which was, he's looking at the town buildings and accessibility there, but I thought I also heard you say, Mr. Gale, that you have to assist private residents with their ADA needs as well. Can you extrapolate on that a little bit?
Sure, I'll give you just simple. I'll give you a couple of examples of aspects that have involved me up to in several areas, and I'll keep it very short. So one of the things that we have done, or I have done as well, is many of our seniors and people who are not able to use technology or don't have it available, or are shut-ins, for example, we're not able to book or schedule or do the follow-up for their COVID visits. Those are things that I've been able to do. I've scheduled quite a number of our residents for their COVID visits. So all of the emails back and forth between the facility, the location, the timing, giving them their appointments, setting up transportation with family members or whoever it might be. Those are things that I've done quite a number of times already for folks. I've helped several residents in town find wheelchair services and resources, or walker services and resources. In several cases, I think in 4 or 5 cases now, I've developed a relationship with families who've called me because they needed mental health services for a family member who has a significant type of disability, or has, as a result of drug abuse or alcoholism, for example, in one case already needed certain services. And I was able to procure those services for that family. I've had situations where families needed to learn how to apply for Mass Health because of COVID, when the families have lost their income resources and had nothing left. So I was able to help those families procure Mass Health and direct them to apply for other types of benefits as well. I've also worked recently with residents who've contacted me, for example, through referrals from other town departments. An example would be Mr. Ferry, who's had referrals from at least 1 or 2 residents asking about potential signage in their neighborhood for handicapped signage, because there are people who go up and down the side of the street in a wheelchair or a walker, or want to go across the street and have a walker and can't do it because of traffic right now. So that involves more study. I'm working on a possible project right now, potentially with the police department, to look at whether or not we can if police officers ticket a person in a handicapped spot, to create a special fund for, be used on projects related to disabilities. So these are just an example of a few of the things. Parks and Rec, working with them collectively, as I think you may know already, to build an accessible playground. That's going to be a long-term project as well. But the private citizen projects are the ones that take the most time and the most back and forth. And frankly, whoever is doing it, they're the most tedious. And whoever's doing it has to know the state criteria and the regulations on what they can and can't do. Because very often there are things that, as the coordinator, I can't do. I can't help a person with a certain type of resource because it's not something that's, town serviceable, if you will. So sometimes I have to tell a resident, we can't help you, but here's resources you can go to as well. So, that's still providing a service and a resource, I guess you could say, but is it a direct service? More than 1 or 2 phone calls? In some cases, no. In some cases, they can take hours and hours and hours of back and forth to get everything right so that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Dr. Zagrafis.
There was a question in the chat from Selectman Hull. He said that the original TA recommendation during Board of Selectmen deliberations was $3,000. Why the increase? He's right. I don't know who changed it, but it should be changed back to $3,000. I did not change that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swart. Thank you, Mr. Zagrafis. I appreciate that.
Yeah, sorry, that one
Absolutely,
didn't
sir.
pop up.
Sorry about that.
Mr. Schwartz,
Mrs. Goulart.
okay, I understand all of the discussion tonight. I understand the need to provide services, but just listening, and I'm not putting a person with us. We know that Mr. Gale has the title and everything else. I'm just talking about the position. Just listening to the discussion tonight, in addition to Mr. Aguirre, Mr. Ferry, probably Mr. Pilling, Council on Aging, there are many services available to the residents of this town that you don't have to go through ADA to get. I borrowed wheelchair, walker, cane. As a matter of fact, I donated back to the council the equipment that my husband brought home from the hospital when he had surgery. What I don't understand is, this started out as a position, and we all knew ahead of time, I thought, that this position would be working with everybody from the town administrator to the kinds of jobs that I've mentioned. So why is it now necessary to pay anybody to be the ADA coordinator? Why is there, it's not a stipend anymore. Why is there a salary for this? I had talked about this before. This could be done by a volunteer who is appropriately qualified. And I think we have somebody. My question is, there are other committees or boards that have responsible positions in this town that are providing services to the residents of this town who don't get anything. I don't have a problem with providing the supplies and materials, because I don't expect anyone to pay that out of their own pocket. And I think it's fine to provide a service that would be what I refer to as the reasonable accommodation. I want to know why it has now become salaried and it's continuing to go up. Personal opinion is, having done the job, number one, yes, we had the feds come in, not the state. They don't come charging through the door screaming fines. They don't come charging through the door saying, we're going to fine you and we're going to sue you. You have, obviously, information now that I didn't have when I was doing this, but I had to deal with a situation. And I called in the town employees I needed to get it done and avoided having to put in the mandate of an elevator in the town hall. And the feds accepted exactly what's in place now, which means if you can't go up the ramp, you need services, whoever's on the first floor of town hall comes down and services you. That was acceptable. I know we've got to do some updating of buildings. That's not relevant to why are we paying a salary to get this job done? If it's that important to somebody to do it, and I don't ask anybody to do things I don't do myself, why don't you volunteer to do it?
So, all right, thank you, Mrs. Goulart. So we're going to move on. I think we've asked for some more information from the Board of Selectmen and Mr. Mullen to do some more research, because I think we need to address that this is becoming an employed position, and we need some more clarification on how that is going to be handled. Before we make any determination. There were a lot of things that Mr. Gale mentioned that he's doing for private citizens that I don't believe fall under what the description of an ADA coordinator is. Some of the COVID things should be Board of Health discussions, not Commission on Disability discussions. Those things were available during COVID through the Board of Health. So this thing is all over the board, my opinion, all over the board. It needs to be reined back in, and we need to have further discussion if we're going to create an employed position, how that position is going to be. And I'm not saying either way, whether I support adding the additional funds for the position, but I think there is just too much missing pieces that need to be clarified before we do anything additional on this. So I'm gonna, unless any other members of the Finance Committee have any questions on that, I'm gonna move to the next budget.
Mr. Swartz?
Yes, Mrs. Goulart.
May I just make a general statement?
Sure.
This deals with budgeting. 2019, we got the 2020 budget together. Once we got into the year 2020, the pandemic hit. That's when we realized, as we got close to the end of the calendar year, we got a problem because we've got vacation that nobody can take. So the Board of Selectmen took action to figure out how are we going to take care of this. We got through 2020. During 2020, as we're getting ready to prepare the 2021 budget, we're hearing from the state, unemployment is high, anticipated revenue at the state level is not coming in where they expected it. We don't know what we're going to give you for state aid. So again, the Board of Selectmen said, we've really got to, working with the town administrator, really said we got to tighten things up. And we did. We were also told when we were doing 2021, watch out for 2022. This could be the killer. Well, here we are doing 2022. We've told departments, we've put in freezes, they can't spend any money above 1,500 without permission from the Board of Selectmen, because we've put all these controls in here. I'm really concerned when I'm seeing things like what happened to our long-term strategy and our plan to get us through 2022. And I only mention that, Ed, because, Mr. Swartz, because, and my former fellow FinCom people, you know what it was like when money was really tight, and I mean, it was tight. And I don't want to get into another one of those situations because I don't know what's going to happen in 22. So that's just something to keep in mind as we go through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Goulet. Okay, I think we've talked that one through a while. I would just, some people on the chat, if that, the chat is meant to ask a question and not to have comments going back and forth between the public. So if that happens, we will take the full line chat offline, and it will just be to submit questions via an input. So it hasn't gotten that bad, but there were a couple of comments back and forth that I would appreciate don't take place during the FinCom meeting.
Mr. Chair, if you need me to come back at any other time for this discussion to continue, just let me know, and thank you for all the time that's been put into this tonight.
Jonathan, when we will put it back on the schedule as we get through the end of the budget, so the selectmen and yourself have time to, and the town administrator, to provide us with additional information as we put.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate all the input and the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. So I see the harbor master on here. I'm assuming that Mike, he wasn't notified that the police chief had asked to move off, and since the harbor master falls under it, but I get we can talk since Ron, you're here, and
Yes,
I
sir.
don't want to leave you hanging.
Thank you.
We will go to the harbor master budget, even though the chief isn't here, and if we have any questions for him, when he joins us next week, we will.
Mike,
we'll
294.
Thank you.
295 should be.
95.
There we go. Oh, there it is.
So from an overview standpoint, is there anything you want to add, Ron, from the request?
No, I'm level funded from last year. I took out the cost of the expense for the trailer. And this year, I'm, keep it simple. No planned purchases. Business as usual. Nothing out of the ordinary.
And the boat's running good?
Excellent. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Good. Any questions of the committee for the harbor master? A quiet meeting is a good meeting, Ron.
Yes, it is.
Thanks for hanging in with us.
Thank you very much.
And then, is Mrs. Ferry here for animal control?
I believe she is, Mr. Chairman.
So we want to jump to that one, even though the chief isn't here. We'll give Mrs. Ferry the opportunity to discuss anything she'd like to discuss. If we have further questions on that, we can bring them up at that point. Stacy, are you with us?
I thought she was, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, she's here. Zane. We're going to switch seats.
Oh, okay. Hi, Stace.
Hi,
How are you?
good and you?
Good. So is there anything that you want to add to your request?
Nope, I level funded my budget and I'm good with it.
Okay. Any questions of the committee?
No,
Again,
sir, I
thanks.
just want to say thank you to anybody that's level funded their budget.
We do appreciate that.
Yes, we do.
Yep. Thanks for hanging in with us, Stace. We appreciate it.
Yep.
All right, moving on. So fire department is moved, veterans agent.
Chris, what number are we?
543.
Thank you. This is level funded, I believe, as well, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Is are our reimbursements coming in as we project on the veterans?
Chris, do you have that information?
Yeah, so so that the committee knows, the actual reimbursements are based on 2 prior years ago, it would be fiscal 19's request for reimbursement, and we get 75% of that, and it gets paid quarterly, I believe.
Okay, and how are we doing with the number of veterans that we're servicing? Because as I look at this, we have a significant, as of 12/31, we had a significant amount left in our veterans benefits services. I know it's always a fluctuating number, but.
My recollection, Mr. Chairman, was that there were approximately 6 folks that were included in the March reimbursement request.
Okay.
But Nancy Pinto could answer your question better than I.
Yeah. Oh, so is Nancy the acting veterans agent?
Well, I mean, she's the administrative assistant, I guess, to the veterans agent. Mr. Hershey might still be around on a volunteer basis.
So are we in the process of filling that spot?
We have filled that spot.
We have.
Yeah, he's going to start, I believe, in June, beginning of.
Okay, okay. All right, so Mike, if you can just confirm the number of, that the number is good.
Yep.
Because we don't want to get caught not funding enough in this line.
Agreed completely, Mr. Chair. Yes.
Okay, okay. All right, any questions on veterans? Building commissioner, is Mr. Aguirre here?
Yes,
Hello?
I am. Hello, everyone.
Mr. Aguirre, how are you tonight?
I'm well. How are you, Finance Committee?
I'm good, thanks.
Very good.
All right, so we'll start with your main budget. Or do you have an overview that you want to talk about? You normally usually give us like a long written statement.
I did. I submitted it. Obviously didn't make it to you, but it's actually pretty simple, except for salary increases. It's actually level funded. There was one decrease in my maintenance account for the vehicle because I'm supposed to be getting a new car, although that's been 6 months since it was ordered. And then you see an increase in the electrical inspector line, which actually mirrors my request from last year. It was reduced before town meeting without my knowledge. So I'm just bringing it back to where it needs to be because I think I'll run a small deficit in that account this year.
So how do we foresee 2022 from a building permit standpoint? I know there's a lot of proposed houses continuing to head our way, but how's the build out on most of the developments that we have now on the books?
We had a reduction in single family homes this past year, so we're wrapping up most of them. There's still some Form A stuff, but the access to water has slowed that down a little bit. Ironically, though, I actually saw a 10% increase in permit numbers. So that means people are working on homes. The issue, though, is local revenues are down because they're different types of permits.
Yeah.
Instead of permits in excess of $1,000, we're talking about permits averaging a couple $100. So permit counts are high, but I think my projection anyway is that local revenues will be down, or receipts from my department, even though the permit count stays healthy.
Okay. Understood. Understood.
We do have a couple of solar projects that are going through permitting. I believe we'll realize one of those before the end of this fiscal year. So that'll certainly help with the bottom line for June. Next year, there's at least one more. So those two things will help. But overall, I think single family numbers will be down until those projects that are proposed get through permitting.
Okay. So I know we talked about it earlier, looking at the building maintenance budget, but from your perspective on town buildings, if there was one major need that we needed to, or one or two major needs that we needed to do from a building maintenance standpoint that is outside of, quote, regular maintenance, do you have a list?
So we just mobilized a building needs study committee, which I was elected chair to. I was waiting to call another meeting until our town administrator was fully on board. Mike and I have discussed that, so it looks like we're going to have a meeting in May. Obviously, the charge of that committee is to recognize exactly what you just said. Fortunately, with the money we spent on Station 1, the Highway Department, Old Town Hall, and Town Hall, we kind of have things in pretty good shape, but we really need to have that committee look at everything so that we can come up with a capital plan for the years ahead. So
Okay.
that's something that, you know, you will be forthcoming, but I'm glad to be a part of it, and I'm glad it's finally going to be realized.
Okay. So all of the lines, all of what you discussed, other than the electrical inspector, the wiring inspector, plumbing inspector, gas inspection, are all level funded?
All level funded, yes.
Okay.
The only thing I did, and I'm not sure if you're seeing that in front of you, is we broke out a number out of the proposed or the requested amount, and that's because I have a mandate from the state for permit oversight and continuing education, but I think I can absorb that without raising that number. But
Okay.
you'll see it split up into two different lines.
I see that, the 5106 and 5107?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. All right, any questions for the building commissioner?
None.
All right, thanks, Jim. So we have one
Thank you,
left to do that
everyone.
we, say that? Hello?
I just said thank you, everyone. Good
Oh,
night.
Thanks,
Night.
Jim.
Night.
So if we can, Mike, you can jump back to the town accountant, because I think we skipped over because Chris had jumped off for a second.
Absolutely.
And then that will hopefully wrap us up for the night.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes,
would ask that the members of the Board of Selectmen remain after you end your meeting because we have something that we need to vote on. Okay.
sure. Thanks, Chairman Pacheco.
Thank you.
Yep, so, Chris, do you just want to give us any, so the good thing, so we're obviously reducing that benefits line because that buyback was completed this year with
That's
the
correct.
employee that retired?
That's correct. So what I can tell you right now, so the provision for the assistant town accountant is based on starting, I believe it's grade 6, step 1, I believe is what it is. So you're going to see a reduction, you know, based on the fact that we're hiring a new, or that we've hired a new assistant town accountant. The clothing benefit, or the clothing, I'm sorry, not the clothing allowance. The sick leave bonus has been eliminated from the contract, and we no longer have a vacation or sick time buyback due either to myself or to the new employee. On the operating budgets or on the expense side of the budget, Mike, if you could move down for me a little bit.
So just a quick question.
Oh,
So
sorry.
obviously, the reduction on the assistant town accountant includes a reduction in longevity, because there is no such thing as longevity with a new employee?
It's actually built into this, the longevity is actually built into the salary now. It's part of the hourly wage.
Okay,
It's like pennies per hour. I forget what the exact dollar amount is, but I'll tell you it's something like 40 cents an hour roughly.
but
So when we do,
but the new employee doesn't receive longevity, correct?
that's correct. The new employee will not see longevity until year 6, I believe, of employment.
Okay,
And I believe we're looking at basically I'm moving money out of the bookbinding line item, and I've added it to the additional equipment line item. The bookbinding, I think, is something that's been there for quite a while, but there's no requirement that I'm aware of anymore in state law that the general ledger and the subsidiary ledgers actually have to be formally bound anymore because they're computer generated reports. The former town accountant was just in the habit of placing those reports inside 3-ring binders, but they also exist in archive form, electronic archive format as well. So if we ever needed to reproduce a general ledger for a particular fiscal year, it can be done, from offsite storage. So what I've done is I've added a line for additional equipment. Basically, the request was simply so that I don't have to use my personal laptop when I'm logging in from home. I figured it should be a town computer that I would be accessing the town network from on a remote basis. But certainly it's up for discussion. If you folks don't feel that that's a worthy purchase, then I can remove that request, or at least I can do without.
Okay. Any questions of the town accountant? Hearing none. Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome.
So that wraps up the budgets that we had scheduled for tonight. Not bad. We're only about, we're actually running on time. But, we did have two big budgets that got skipped over. But any questions of the committee on our starting point? Any questions on the overall budget that we've put together? It's I think we definitely have some work to do on this one. We have a lot of open questions. Please, if you have anything that comes up between now and the next meeting that you want to get answers on, the town administrator and I are talking every day. And I think to the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator, I think you got what our questions we have open for you guys that we'd like to get some answers to as we go through the process. I think we really need to get a better, my opinion, a better number on that first page, more accurate to where I think we are, and from my years of experience with it, we'll continue to look at it. So, to the town administrator, do you have anything you want to add or any questions you have?
Oh, no, and I apologize on anything that I came off as a little rusty on, just trying to get the flow of everything, but I definitely, the first thing I want to do is make sure we're reconciling that bottom line number. So we will do that for you.
Okay. Any questions of the committee?
No, sir.
No? Good. Anything the selectmen want to add?
No, I like the comments and discussion. It's very helpful from my point of view.
Thanks, Ken. Anyone else? Dr. Grofsis or Mr. Hall?
Mr. Schwartz, I'm very impressed with FinCom and how this meeting went this evening. You asked some very tough questions, but it's good for the best interests of the town. Thank you.
No, thank you. All right. If no one has anything else, I'll leave it to the Board of Selectmen and make a motion. Is there a motion for the FinCom to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it.
Aye.
It's all yours, Ken.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
so
you, everyone.
okay, so the Board of Selectmen, we have one item to review, discuss, and act on. There's a request by the Daisy Brown Titan Troop to participate in an Earth Day project. It's my understanding that they want to plant 11 fir tree seedlings. And I just saw Mr. Ferry leave, but he's going to be involved with that. They want to plant it on town property. It's my understanding Mr. Ferry's back, that he's willing to have that happen. He does, I believe, at least as of last Saturday, he had a request that it be planted temporarily on the new property that the town bought right next to the town hall, temporarily, so that they can grow a little bit bigger, because I'm sure they're a foot or maybe 18 inches high. Am I correct on that, that's what you want to do, Mr. Ferry, plant them there, or have them plant them?
Yes, this troop leader is very amendable to any suggestions and excited for this program. I threw that idea out to her. No one, I haven't received a consensus answer from any of those entities that would be using that Briggs property. That was my idea. I thought it was a good match, but I don't want to step on anyone's toes. So this troop, we're talking about 5 and 6-year-old girls. They're going to be planting these trees, and the trees are just as young as they are. And so I think it's a fitting thing that they transplant them again in the future. It does not have to be on that property. I just, as for sake of voting, if you can approve that or any appropriate conservation area, because we have quite a bit of land in town, we could enjoy it. We do have to fortify them so wildlife doesn't eat them for a while.
Yeah. So my colleagues on the board, any comments you want to make?
No, I just wanted to say I support this, and if Selectman Hull and yourself are amenable, I'm happy to make a motion or second one.
I will second your motion, Dr. Segal.
So what exactly is the motion so that we make sure we have it correct?
Thank you. I'm going to make a motion that the Board of Selectmen approve the request as submitted.
Second.
Any further discussion? If
Just
not,
wanted to thank, as always, Superintendent Ferry for helping to coordinate it, sir.
I agree.
Absolutely.
No, thank you for your support with this. And yeah, the trees don't have a voice, but they are very important to our community. Yes.
Roll call vote, Mr. Hull,
Aye.
Mr. Zagrafis,
Aye.
and Campuchico says aye. Is there anything else that we have? I don't believe so on the agenda. If
No,
not,
Mr. Chair.
if not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I hope not. Roll call, Mr. Hull,
Aye.
Mr. Zagrafis,
Aye.
and Campuchico also says aye. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
See you Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you again.